I would like to ask you a few questions about the cultural shock that you had during in your stay in the United States. So let's start.
Okay. Yes. That's me.
We start with the first point in the interview, touching the issue of the importance of language in your life. Yes. Your first question, how do you feel about learning English language?
Well, I feel great by learning English or any other new language. I think that it's something very challenging for me. It's a bit hard by the time that you get older to learn a new language. No, it's not that easy. But the fact of being able to communicate your thoughts, your feelings with others is just so great. It's so worth it.
So, what are some challenging aspects of adjusting to a new language environment?
Ooh. I personally have some issues by adapting to new environments in general. So, for example, when you try to learn a new language, if the language itself it's a barrier, I mean, it's harder for me, especially when you try to communicate what you want to feel or your thoughts with other people. That's the main barrier, the language by itself.
Okay, I can see the question three. I What are the pros and cons of living in a multilingual society?
I think, for example, the pros could be that it's an environment where you get to learn constantly because of this multilingual shock.
Mhm.
And a con could be precisely that because of the fact of being different people from other cultures, they may not be able to understand to
Mhm.
each other, and some customs, some traditions or behaviors are not that polite or correct for other people. So that could lead to a major issue, to some conflict.
Okay, so we now turn to a few questions about the culture you witnessed. Okay.
Okay.
How are American customs similar or different from customs of your home culture?
When I was there, for example, breakfast, meals, dinners, they are very intimate and like private events among family members. So it's like a whole. Ya otra vez. Espera. Eso no lo sé, chingada madre.
Ah, no pasa nada.
Chingado. Me quedé en intimate. ¿Qué significa eso? Es un tiempo íntimo, ¿no? Entre los miembros familiares. Ok, ya.
Ujú.
Ya, ya. Ya, ya puedo.
Dale, tú dale. De todos modos,
When I was there, I get to realize that breakfast, meals, dinners, they are very special and close moments among family members, just like it happens here in Mexico. Also, for example, at restaurants, it's very common to tip, to be very generous when you tip to waiters. So that's amazing. I mean, in some sort of way, to recognize waiters' job. So I think that's cool. And some differences, okay, from our culture, I will say, for example, American families, they often have their kids to do some sport or and cultural events since they are kids, since they are little. And that's not very common here in Mexico. For them, they're very competitive persons. Well, we can see that, for example, at Olympic Games. So it's very common for them to have their children be very competitive since they're kids, and that's not something that happens here in Mexico.
yeah. What are some customs you particularly like or dislike and why?
Mm, I really like the fact that during breakfast, meals, dinners, the family that I live with used to hang out and really take advantage of this time, and they used to talk about their days and how are they feeling, etc. So I really like the fact that they had this time together for as family.
Mhm.
What I didn't dislike is that, unlike Mexicans, they're not very warm people. So they could be a bit cold, in the way that they behave or they talk to, for
Okay.
example, the strangers. They're not like, hey, they don't have this confidence that us Mexicans really have with strangers or other people. They're a bit cold. So that's something that I really didn't enjoy that very much, because I used to think, oh my God, he's rude or he doesn't like me. But no, it's just the way that they are.
What are some customs from your home culture that you would like to share with people in America?
Oh, I really like to share, for example, the Mexican gastronomy. It was something really almost impossible to do because they don't have like the ingredients or the materials that we have here in Mexico. But I really wanted to share that we love spicy food. We have tortilla for every of our meals, chilaquiles, quesadillas, flautas, tacos. I really wanted to share that experience, and but it was not that possible.
Ay, me dio hambre. Okay. Now we will talk a little about the history you lived during in the state in the United States.
Okay, I'm going to fail this.
Okay. How do you think American historical events affect our global community?
Well, how do they affect our global community? It's certain that the United States of America, it's a world potency. So whatever happens in that country, it may somehow have some impact all over the world. For example, the 9/11 event. For example, the recent issue that happened, Black Lives Matter. That was a very relevant event that that caused social media to raise. It was a huge impact, for example, through Facebook, Twitter, and all social networks. I mean, it was a way of people to like wake up and to realize that racism, xenophobia, even is happening nowadays. So I think that was very important that it happened there in the USA, and it was some sort of awakening for all the world. That was a nice event.
So continue. What do you know about the American 9/11 events?
9/11. I know that Bush was the current president, and in short words, it was an Islamic terrorist attack against the Twin Towers, which caused lots of death, and actually it could have led to the Third World War. So yeah, it was kind of sad.
So, what sorts of things have you learned in school about the United States?
Well, I haven't learned like a lot about the USA history. Well, mainly because I suck at history. I don't even know Mexican history, that well. But what I remember, for example, in at English classes, is where they taught me about USA history. They just talked about the most relevant presidents, for example, from the first one, Washington, to Lincoln, John F. Kennedy. We've also learned some relevant events that have happened at the USA, for example, the Civil War, their most famous days, 4th of July, etc. And some of the, for example, technological advancements and improvements that they have made or achieved through all these years. That will be the most relevant.
That sounds great. Oh my god.
Yes, very interesting.
So, finally, I would like to know about problems you had to live with your clothes.
Okay.
Mhm. How do you feel about the prices of clothing in the United States?
Ooh. Okay, this one is like a tricky question because I mean there are two sides. There are lots of outlets or some like big stores where you could find cheap clothes but of good quality. And I think the only issue was, for example, the sizes. Generally, you say Americans are big people, or at least where I live, it was a county nearby San Francisco. So it was very hard for me to find. I'm very thin, so I didn't find jeans of my size. So that was a very hard one for me. And when I tried to go to these events, to these outlets or cheap stores, nah, it was impossible for me to find nice clothes. But if I went to the nicest stores,
The
the known brands, Gap, Nike, that was very expensive. It was so more expensive than here in Mexico. So
okay.
I decided to eat or to buy myself some clothes.
So, family question. Do you feel pressure to change your dress style in order to fit in with a different culture?
Personally, I don't. I generally don't care about what other people think or say about me. So I feel like zero pressure to change my dress style. There where I live, it was like a mixture. There were some people that dress like cowboys, very county style, and the others were like very snobby, muy fresas. So no, it was like a nice multicultural mix-up. So no, I had no issues with that.
Con sus Jordan carísimos.
Sí.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was nice talking with you, Sian.
Oh my god. Okay. Ay, gracias. Te lo juro que me